Oakland County politics falls into a kind of chaos to which it is most unaccustomed. The new Oakland County Executive, Dave Coulter, is here. And we'll tackle everything from a wild week for the president to a barely noticed but glaring problem for Mayor Duggan. Today is Sunday, August 25th, 2019, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. It is hard to believe, but we have arrived at the last Sunday of August, and once again, a Michigan summer has just flown by. Nat King Cole sang about those lazy, hazy, crazy days of summer. We've been pretty short of lazy, just a little bit of hazy. But goodness, we have been full up on crazy, and this past week was another prime example. For starters, reporters spent all week swinging their heads back and forth as if they were watching a tennis match, and yet they were only watching one player. The president was really all over the place on gun control measures, especially whether he was committed or not to stricter background checks. There was also a renewed suggestion that it was time to end birthright citizenship, a concept enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And maybe most head-turning, bizarre talk of trying to buy Greenland, which ended up completely scuttling a planned state visit by the president to Denmark. We'll talk about that wild week this morning. We've also been overdue to talk about a Free Press report that found the Duggan administration has not been honest about the lengths to which it tried to support the Make Your Date nonprofit, including a lot of deleted emails. We'll get to that as well. But up first, a little more than a week after L. Brooks Patterson was laid to rest, Oakland County has a new county executive for the first time in more than 2 decades. But to many, the race to fill the seat was very poorly managed in a number of different ways. The new county executive is Dave Coulter, the former mayor of Ferndale, and he's up first this morning on Flashpoint. Well, for the first time in 26 years, Oakland County has a new county executive, though there is a lawsuit from the Oakland County Republicans that seeks to blow it all up. We'll see where that goes. In fact, a hearing next week. But in the meantime, that new executive is David Coulter, former county commissioner, more recently the mayor of Ferndale, and my first guest this morning on Flashpoint. Dave, good to have you here. Thanks very much for coming.
It's so good to be here, and you're making my mom's morning because she loves your show.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coulter. Very nice to have you with us this morning. I want to let's start with how we kind of got here, which to many people has been an unseemly mess, especially when we saw that originally the vote on how this was going to proceed was scheduled for right during Brooks's funeral.
Yeah.
This has all been kind of, to a lot of people, very unseemly.
Yeah, you know, and politics can get that way. It's not called sausage making for no reason. And I wasn't part of any of that. I wasn't involved in any of that. So I sat on the sidelines and watched it like everybody else. And yeah, it was almost like a drama, a soap opera. Every day it was another twist and turn. But politics can get like that, and that's kind of an extreme example of it. But you know, the law said a political body has to make a political decision, and so.
Well, I don't think it was. I'm not sure it was. Well, actually, we'll get to that part now as to whether the law was broken, because Dave Woodward, the head of the commission, resigned in hopes, I think, of being the county executive. When it became obvious he wasn't going to be, kind of rescinded his resignation, and he's the reason that you're the county executive, because he was that extra vote. That's the source of this lawsuit. Was there anything illegal about that you can see?
Yeah, no, but I'm not a lawyer, but let me tell you what I did. I talked to the lawyers, I talked to the county's lawyers, I looked at the legal opinions of the other folks. I said, I don't want to take this appointment if there's something wrong with that. Right. They all agree that that was on sound footing, that you're, as a public official, you're not officially resigned until the public body accepts your resignation. That's pretty settled law. Yeah.
So far, you've spoken pretty glowing terms about what you saw out of Brooks Patterson as a leader for the county, and yet, by virtue of the fact that you're a Democrat, it's a big change after 26 years. Yeah. What do you expect is going to change for Oakland County residents?
You know, I am a Democrat, and when I served there for 8 years, Brooks and I argued about a lot of different things. I have been in favor of some kind of comprehensive mass transit system since I first got elected, and here we are 17 years later, and we're still no further along than we were. A little further along, but not much. Yeah. I didn't favor the expansion of I-75. I would have rather invested those funds into transit and those sort of things. I'm also really passionate about making sure that Oakland County is perceived and really is a welcoming and inclusive community. I think it's important in attracting talent and people to the community that people feel safe there. We were a welcoming community in Ferndale. We passed an LGBT rights ordinance in Ferndale, and I think those things are important. That wasn't a priority for Brooks. So you're going to see me do things like that.
Do you think we can get, I mean, we're now a little over, not even quite a year and a half away from an election. Can we see transit on the ballot in 2020 again? Another attempt, even though the last one, which was not that long ago, failed?
Well, but it was that long ago. It was 2016, and here we are. We're going to be 4 years later. And so I do worry that if we don't do it in 2020, it could be another 4 years, and then another 8 years. And so there are folks that would like to see it happen in 2020, and I think that's a realistic time frame, but it's the product that's more important than the timing. So we have to have the right plan. And so I need to get myself up to speed on, and help me understand, why did that last one go down in 2016? What was it about it that the public just didn't buy? Have we addressed those issues? I don't want to put something before people just on an artificial time frame, but at the same time, I'm anxious to get moving on this.
The Patterson Manifesto has long been whatever was best for Oakland County. If it was neutral for Oakland County and good for the other areas around, fine. If he felt it was bad for Oakland County, and he clearly felt that mass transit, that the shouldering of the financial burden was going to land unfairly on his very wealthy county.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with his manifesto. That totally makes sense. The question is mass transit good for Oakland County
and
the
go.
region?
I guess that is the question.
And I believe that it is. I think not only for the quality of life that it affords our residents, but for the economic development. Our businesses are screaming for economic development, especially the larger employees whose, their employees come from Macomb and Wayne and Detroit and all over, and they need to get them to work. Yeah. So I think, and to attract the young talent. Today's younger millennials, they don't necessarily want a car. They want to take transit, they want to be able to walk to work and those sort of things. And so I think to attract talent and jobs and the quality of life that it offers seniors and others, I do think it's helpful. Now, the price tag is going to always be the thing, and we have to, obviously, the devil's in the details, and I don't know the details yet. I will get myself up to speed.
You haven't been able to get the whole thing figured out in a week, huh?
I haven't solved it all in a week. Maybe the mayor has, or Mark Hackle, but I haven't. But we'll get there, I think.
I spoke to Brooks just a few months before his passing, and he was very candid with me about worrying about Democrats taking over for him, in a sense that Oakland County has been squeaky clean as far as the way that its ethics have been run for many, many years. Never a scandal in government. Fully funded pension funds. 3-year budgeting that was always done on time, and really no financial mayhem. And I think he always thought that Democrats, left to their own devices, tend to spend too loosely and freely. And that that's the portion that he told me he was worried about that. So how would you address that?
I get it. Brooks was old school, and that, in my mind, is an old school stereotype of Democrats. If you look at what we did in Ferndale, first of all, I took Brooks's idea of multi-year budgeting and I brought it to Ferndale. So the first thing I did as mayor is we adopted a multi-year budget. It's now a 3-year balanced budget, just like the county.
Oakland County.
Because I learned it in Oakland County, and it works. So, you can teach me new tricks. And we kept a real close eye on the finances. We actually lowered taxes twice during my 9 years as mayor. Now, Ferndale's this progressive, liberal city with all this stuff. Yeah, but I also lowered taxes twice, and we spent a lot of time with economic development attracting businesses. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be a Democrat who believes in the social policies and the fairness and equity issues that we care about, but also know that, and it's not just pro-business. I look at it as pro-jobs, right? When you bring, companies to Ferndale and Oakland County, it creates good-paying jobs for our residents. It's great that the businesses gain from that, but it's about the taxes that you generate. The more taxes you raise, the lower the taxes can be for residents. So, I think Democrats can do both, chew gum and walk at the same time, and he doesn't need to worry.
The last thing I wanted to get to, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring this up with you or not, but the issue of your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
You were one of the first openly gay mayors that the state has seen. And I'd like us to think that we're getting to that point where nobody even mentions that about someone, but I'm not sure we're there yet, given that it's not a part of the Elliott Larson situation in Michigan yet. And I guess I'll ask you, does it matter that you're a gay man now becoming Oakland County executive?
You know, I don't bring it up much because it doesn't matter to how you clean the streets and pick up the trash or attract businesses. It doesn't matter in that sense. But I'm proud of it, and I think there might be a young person out there who's struggling with their own sexuality who might say, wow, if he's in that position, then maybe someday I can be in it. So I'm not ashamed of it. It's not something I wouldn't want to talk about because, you know, it's part of who I am.
You didn't have a lot of those role models to follow, I assume, when you were 15.
I'll be honest with you. I loved politics since I was in high school, but it really never occurred to me that I'd get the opportunity to do this because I didn't have role models like that. So it's important for that reason, but not for doing the job.
Well, as I kind of jokingly say, congratulations.
Yeah.
Because now here you are in the belly of the beast. But congratulations on the appointment and best of luck to you. And thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mom, thanks for letting us borrow it today as well. We'll continue with Flashpoint right after this.
America's #1 Labor Day sale starts now at Art Van Furniture and Mattress. Beat the crowds and save up to 75% store-wide. Plus, take an extra 20% off with 0% financing up to 50 months. Get the lowest prices of the year. Power reclining sofas, bedrooms, dining, free 50-inch TVs. Win a classic Ford 100. It's the biggest Labor Day sale ever at Art Van Furniture and Mattress. Ends Monday, 9 p.m.
After receiving a delinquent property tax bill for the 2 lots connected to my home, I was concerned. I didn't even know that I had a past due bill. I went down to the Wayne County Treasurer's office, and the staff worked with me to keep my property out of foreclosure.
My property taxes became delinquent after I fell behind on my bills. Treasurer Sabri and his staff came to the town hall in my city and provided information about resources available to help me. At the meeting, I found out about payment plan options.
Let us help you. Our goal is 0 owner-occupied properties getting foreclosed and going to the auction. Come down to our office at 400 Monroe in downtown Detroit on the 5th floor. Call 313-224-5990 during our normal business hours from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and until 6:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. Or email textinfo@waynecounty.com for assistance. Take the first step. Contact our office today.
It worked for us.
Tonight after preseason football, Steelers versus Titans. Then at 11, imagine caring for a stranger's child day and night for years. And then
you will have to say goodbye. You do have to pack that trunk. You will see him walk away. That'll be the end.
They saw him through life-changing surgery. And now it's time for Abdul to return home.
We'll be there for the emotional farewell and see the reunion they've all been waiting for.
Tonight on Local 4 News at 11.
All right, let's bring in this morning's roundtable. A lot to talk about this morning. Joining me are Stephen Henderson from Detroit Today, WDET. Former Detroit City Councilwoman Sheila Cockrell is back with us. Former United States Congressman Republican Mike Bishop is here. And from the Detroit News editorial page editor Nolan Finley. Gang, thanks very much. Nolan, let me start with you. I think you're concerned, coming off my conversation with Dave Coulter, I think you've got some concern about, it clearly was an unholy mess, the way that we saw the fire drill develop around. But now that that we have someone in place, a lot of those appointees that Brooks had surrounded himself with, people around, they are retiring, giving up their positions, and I think you're concerned about
the brains of Oakland County walked out the door. You lose a guy like Robert Dadow, who's probably the best numbers guy, the best money guy in government in Michigan. Jerry Poison. Phil Bertolini's leaving at the end of the month. Lori Van Pelt. That's a lot of brain power to leave at once. And the county's going to notice that. Doesn't matter who's in that county executive seat. Those people were key to making Oakland County run the way it has been running for the last 20 years.
Oakland County resident, you're shaking your head, yes?
Well, this is a real loss for Oakland County. I would say that Oakland County's government is one of the best run governments in all of the United States. It has been, it assembled one of the greatest set of leaders under Brooks Patterson anywhere in the United States. Everywhere I go, when I was in Congress, they talked about Oakland County and used it as an example of how to run a government. So this is a huge loss from Brooks's perspective, obviously, but also from all of his team that's gone now.
We just heard from Dave Coulter. You had him on your program. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, they walked out. Nobody made them leave. So I guess the question has to be, if people care so deeply about the county and the shape it was in and its reputation, why did they all walk out?
Well, I think there certainly was some distaste about the way that the entire process worked. As I mentioned earlier, they were going to hold a meeting on succession. It was scheduled for during the time of the funeral.
Right.
I mean, that was, I think some people felt insulted.
They might have.
Fair to say?
But, you know, political hijinks not new in Oakland County, and Brooks was as adept at that as anybody else. You know, he rigged the system for districting so to make sure that there was still a Republican majority long after that would have been supported by voters. Look, this is politics. And look, if you care that much about the government that you helped build, you should have stayed. I mean, Dave Coulter said, I will keep anybody who wants to stay.
Yep.
He sees himself as a transition figure. He's trying to ease the loss of Brooks. They didn't want to do it.
All right, let's move down I-75. This was a story that the Free Press broke. They broke it the night before Brooks Patterson passed away. Of the same weekend, we had El Paso and Dayton. It's gotten very little attention. But Sheila Cockrell, clearly the Doug administration was not telling us the truth about how hard they worked to try to get funding for the Make Your Date organization. I don't know how much trouble you would be in for trying to help a nonprofit get funding. I do have a fair idea of how much trouble you're in when you don't tell the truth about that and when you try to delete emails of the past. It's not the crime, it's always the cover-up, right?
Correct. And right now there are multiple investigations that are ongoing, the Inspector General, the State Attorney General, and we're going to have to see where, what they come out with, because deleting emails is not something that is acceptable under any circumstance.
Mullen, we haven't been told the truth here, obviously.
Well, yeah, and here we go again. You know, it's almost unbelievable that once again you got a mayor who can't control his personal behavior, his personal appetites, bringing scandal to a city that doesn't need scandal, doesn't need any more of these kind of scandals. And it is really disheartening because a lot of people put a lot of stock in Mike Duggan. And for him to go slipping around like this and using his office to help his girlfriend, I mean, we've seen that before, and we didn't expect that out of him.
Stephen, your thoughts? What's going to happen here?
So, I mean, I'm still just agog at the idea that anybody in this day and age thinks, hey, the way to fix this is let's delete some emails. I mean, Hillary Clinton is not the president of the United States because she deleted emails. Why would anyone have suggested that that was true? And the idea that there hasn't been, more pressure on this administration from the press, from other places, to explain that or to have some consequences mete out is one of the things that I'm also a little surprised by. I mean,
so far, again, I think it's interesting that this has been as quiet as it has. I haven't felt a great deal of public conversation about it because of it in the middle of summer and all the other things that happened that weekend. But you would expect somebody is going to have to pay for this with a job.
Absolutely. I mean, can you imagine keeping someone on if they did this, or if it happened and they didn't know it happened?
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to Washington, because it was a really fascinating week, Mike Bishop. I'm a little lost on a number of things about where the president's head is on. But let's start with his changing positions on background checks and guns. Do we have any map for where he wants the country to go?
I can't speak for the president, but I know this is one of his.
You're the first person that's ever said that.
No, I think that he's trying the best he can to find some kind of ground, medium, where folks can come together and try and find a solution. This is one of those issues that there is no one solution. And as a leader, he's got to come forward with ideas and try to rally folks around it. He's bringing members into the White House to talk it through, and he's just finding a brick wall. If this were a solution by either party, they've had control of the chamber in the past, they would have done it already. They haven't done it for a reason. There's not a complete plan out there to address the problem. Laws are supposed to solve a problem, not create one. And we have all these laws, we're just not following them.
Right, but we also have a huge consensus in the country that this has to be addressed. People want to get rid of assault weapons, people want background checks, people want the red flag stuff going on. I mean, who doesn't want this stuff are lobbyists in Washington who have an extraordinary and immoral, if not immoral, hold on people in the United States Congress. That's the problem. People want something done. Nobody feels safe anywhere in this country right now. If you go to the show, if you go to a mall, where can you go? A church, a synagogue, a mosque? Where can you go where there's not the threat that with more guns than people in the United States, somebody's not going to get shot?
None of these laws are going to change that fact. There's still going to be 300 million guns on the streets of America. Now, the last thing I heard the president say, if you look at it, it doesn't sound like he's that far off the people who are pushing universal background checks, because he said correctly.
He kind of waffled twice.
He said there are circles I want to close, and that's basically
Is there a great argument to be made against universal background checks that I'm not really aware of?
There are some areas that, like if you pass a gun from father to son or sell a gun to your cousin, there's some areas you might not want the government in the middle of your business. But what he said here, what people are asking for, is to close the private sale exemption. And when the president said, there are circles we need to close, I think he might be saying the same thing, or he may be saying the same thing.
So increasingly I am starting to think that we're doing this all the wrong way. We've got to start thinking of this as a public health crisis. This needs to be treated the way tobacco was 20 years ago, right? You make a legal product that kills people. That does not exempt you from obligation or responsibility, and Congress has every right to reach out through the Commerce Clause to the gun industry and the people who sell these things to say, listen, it's not going to be the same way that it is that it has been. And when you think about the public health threat that this poses to people in this country, it is not different.
I heard someone else
cigarettes.
make the tobacco comparison last week, and the slapback was, but cigarettes aren't protected in the Constitution.
And nor do they protect you from others who might want to kill you.
Nor is the manufacture or sale of weapons. The Second Amendment doesn't say anything about that. That's commerce. It is not expression, and so it's not protected.
Let me get to a quick break. We'll come back, we'll continue on this, and we got to get to Greenland. Back with more. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
The 2019 Cadillacs are made for summer. It's your time to shine. GM employees and eligible family members with a current eligible GM lease get this low mileage lease on this 2019 Cadillac XT4 for $299 per month.
Going on now at Art Van Furniture and Mattress. It's our biggest Labor Day sale ever. Save up to $1,400 on top name brand mattresses. Plus 0% for up to 72 months with our Art Vantage Reward Card. Free same-day delivery, free TVs, free power base upgrades, free sleep bundles. Get the lowest prices of the year on huge doorbusters. Sealy Queen just $296. Beautyrest $496. Tempur-Pedic $28 a month at the Art Van Furniture and Mattress Labor Day sale and all Pure Sleep stores.
Experience the Galling difference at the all-new Galling Toyota in Warren on the corner of Van Dyke and I-696. Come visit our completely remodeled, state-of-the-art dealership featuring over 300 new and certified pre-owned vehicles. Right now, take home the 2019 Tundra SR5 Double Cab with four-wheel drive for as low as $178 a month, or lease the 2019 Highlander LE for as low as $238 a month. Get to the all-new Galling Toyota in Warren today.
Hey parents, are you ready for back to school?
I'm so nervous. My baby's growing up.
Regularity to our days and a less cranky kid.
New experience for her, making new relationships, meeting new teachers.
Ready or not, Local 4 News Today is here to help.
All next week, we're testing products to help your kids kick their school year off in style.
Monday,
these products claim to make your kids' lunch easier and greener. I'll test them out for you.
There's a school kid in all of us.
Watch on Local 4 News Today.
Welcome back. Nolan Finley made an interesting point in the break. We've seen things in mass sprays of violence with guns. We say, well, if we haven't done anything now. We said that after Newtown. I think you feel the same way about, we saw a 9-year-old girl mauled to death by dogs in Detroit last week. It's still crushing to me. But and you feel a similar.
I don't know how we eat or sleep as long as this can happen in our city. 3 years ago, 4-year-old boy, Xavier Strickland, dragged from his mother's arms and eaten in front of her by 4 pit bulls. Now, 3 years later, nothing changed. 3 years later, 9-year-old little girl, Emma Hernandez, dragged off her bicycle and eaten on a city of Detroit, torn apart. Something's got to change this time. We still have an animal control department. You can't get them to answer the phone. They work 10 to 3. They take calls 10 to 3. This is a public health crisis and a threat to our children.
Sheila?
Yeah, I agree that one of the problems is you can't do breed bans. That's not legal. So the question is, what kind of structure can you create? It's like, to me, it's another example of where the infrastructure of the city's ability to enforce laws has not been fully.
And the city has very aggressive animal control laws on the books. They don't enforce them. They got a part-time animal control office that won't answer the phone.
There's not. Well, I know some of those animal control officers, and for example, in Southwest Detroit, some of them are heroes because of the way they come out.
No doubt.
But there aren't enough of them.
I've left myself all of only 45 seconds, Mike, to get to Greenland. I can't believe that I've done this. I expected the president to say, look, I was joking. I wasn't trying to buy Greenland, but he was. And now we've scuttled a Denmark state dinner meeting.
Real estate is in his blood. It's the largest island in the world. He's got to have it. And, I think, Truman was the first to come out and try and buy Greenland. And, it's going to happen in the future. I think he looks at everything like this as an opportunity. And that's just the way he is. That's in his nature.
Well, we'll have to see what happens when Putin says he wants Hawaii.
I was going to say, why don't we buy something with oil like Saudi Arabia?
We got to go. Meet the president next. Have a great week.
They said it about Alaska. They said it about